Hello, my name is Everett Moss, and today we'll be talking about my journey to CRNA. We'll touch on some of the areas that my career has taken me, as well as how those areas impacted my journey to becoming a CRNA, some of the lessons learned along the way, and life after CRNA school. I'll start with this before I tell you a little bit more about myself. There's no straight line to success. There's no timeline other than the self-imposed. You'll arrive to your destination not just in time, but at the right time. I'll repeat that so you don't have to rewind it back. There's no straight line to success. There's no timeline other than the self-imposed, and you'll arrive to your destination not just in time, but at the right time. Oftentimes throughout my career, I've had people really stressing about not reaching a certain location at the age or as quick as a coworker, colleague, family member. And that undue stress has served as more of a obstacle for them to overcome as opposed to reaching their goal. And that's one of the things that you'll see throughout my journey is that I did not take a straight line. I didn't have the perfect age by some people's definition. So with that, I'll get into who I am and how I've gotten where I am. Again, my name is Everett Moss. I have my Doctor of Nursing Practice in Nurse Anesthesia. I am a CRNA, which stands for a Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist. I practice in the South Carolina area, and I've been practicing now for about a year. How did I get started in healthcare? Well, my father was a firefighter, as well as an EMT. And growing up, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I remember reflecting when I was a younger man about a career path. And I thought, my father took care of us as a firefighter EMT, and we had an okay living and he had a great schedule. So that's what kind of propelled me into the fire service. Once I began fire service, it was a requirement to become an EMT intermediate at the time. And that was my first introduction to taking care of people, being there for people, and learning how to practice and administer medicine. Once I became that EMT and started working in emergency medical services, I found a liking to taking care of people and knowing what to do in their time of need. And that really fed my fuel. It fed my desire to do more in healthcare. After that, I decided to go to paramedic school, and to help you kind of understand the difference, because I often notice that some people don't really understand the difference between an EMT and a paramedic. It's kind of similar to that of maybe a CNA and then an LPN and then an RN. For all of my nursing folks, you kind of understand that there's a different level of care or licensure with each one of those steps. And that's the same thing as far as an EMT and a paramedic goes. But during my time as a EMT and a paramedic, it really helped to fine tune some emergency skills, because we were always functioning outside of the realm of the hospital. And oftentimes that meant that I may have been the highest level of care there. And I think that was really pivotal and important for my CRNA career, because I don't always have someone right there all of the time to help guide what to do next. And that's a really important skill as a CRNA, is being comfortable managing a patient in a true emergency. Amongst other things, fire service taught teamwork. It taught how to work well with others and overall collectively achieve the same goal. Because in the operating room, you are spending a lot of your time with other healthcare professionals, be it the surgeon, be it the techs, be it the circulator, and you really have to know how to manage that teamwork environment and also be a team player to achieve the goal, and that's ultimately great outcomes for the patient. After working in fire service, I then went on to work as a flight paramedic. And working as a flight paramedic, was really top tier goal for me, because I remember working the emergency room as a paramedic, and I saw these people come in an adult onesie, is what I call it, the flight suit. And everybody kind of stopped in awe of the flight crew. And I remember thinking, what made them so special. And what I've learned as I pursued that journey during my career is that they were kind of the cream of the crop. And it didn't mean that they knew more than everybody else. It just meant that they had to have a special set of skills to go into any environment and learn very quickly what needed to be done, package the patient up, load them into a helicopter, fly across the state, across counties, and then deliver them to another healthcare facility. And so that meant that they needed to have extra training, extra exposure, and extra experience to be successful at that. And that really kind of lit a fire under me to learn more and do whatever it took to be considered that level of training in my career. And so that's what really encouraged me or inspired my desire to become a flight paramedic. The lessons that I learned during my time in flight is really situational awareness and how to quickly enter into an environment and gain not only the trust of a patient, but also the trust of the crews that were turning over this patient to you. As a flight crew member, you have a very short amount of time to talk to a patient. And unless this was a patient that was unconscious, or if you had to perform what's called a rapid sequence intubation, this patient may be awake. This patient may have never been on a helicopter before. They may be terrified, even though they may be dying or close to dying. They may be more terrified than to fly. So I think that part of my career really helped me learn the skill set to quickly gain a patient's trust, ensure them that they're going to be well taken care of, that they would be protected, and that this was as safe as can be to transport them. And I think that as a CRNA, that pre-exposure really helped me spend moments before taking a patient back to the operating room, telling them that they are going to be unconscious, unresponsive, and that basically I am managing their respirations and their vital signs while the surgeon is on the other end opening them up. And that's really a valued skill set within the anesthesia profession that the books just can't teach you. So I'm thankful for that time as a flight paramedic and flight nurse, because I later transitioned. And it gave me a good foundation in how to build that rapport with the patient and with the crews or the team in a very short time frame. After becoming a medic, to kind of give you some background on how I moved from paramedic to RN. Some states, I can't speak for every state, only the state that I was in, but they have what's called a paramedic to RN bridge program. And most of these programs require you to have some time as a paramedic, and then you can do an abbreviated nursing program. You don't leave out any of the training. You still test out of every single subject that you go through in a traditional nursing program, but they give you credit for some of the education that you received as a paramedic, and then you go through the courses. So my program was only a year long. It's an associate degree program. And once I completed that program, I began working in the ER. Give you a little background on that. I didn't do my research, which if CRNA is a journey that you want to pursue, that you are set on considering and committing to, definitely do your research, which I did not. And so I ended up in the ER because I wasn't committed to the process. And the ER was somewhat of an easy area for me to get in. If you can imagine, as a paramedic, you spend a lot of time in the emergency room dropping patients off. And so I had built a relationship with a lot of the people within the ER, which made it easier for me to transition. Most of you who are already in the nursing profession may be familiar with a nurse residency program. And while I have the absolute utmost respect and appreciation for a nurse residency program, a lot of times this is for the person who came out of nursing school without a background in healthcare or a background in that type of or level of patient care. And that was something that I didn't really want to commit to full time because, remind you, at the time I was still flying and I didn't want to give up my flight career. And I didn't want to go through some of the basic training that you go through in nurse residency that kind of closes the gaps that you may not have received during your clinical rotations as a nursing student. And the particular ICU that I tried to apply to, they wouldn't offer an abbreviated or even a part-time basis for a nurse residency program. So I decided that the ER was a better fit because they would allow me to have an abbreviated program and I could keep flying without having to work full-time flight and full-time ER. They told me I had too many competing priorities, which looking back, I probably did have a lot of competing priorities. But again, there's no straight line to success. So that took me to the emergency room. I'm appreciative of that time. The emergency room taught me yet again that rapid action that doesn't happen as often in the ICU. There's not a lot of surprise patients in the ICU, if you will. In the emergency room, you have patients that show up on the doorstep. You didn't know they were coming. You don't know what they're coming with, and you have no background on them. As a CRNA, that happens relatively frequently if you work in a facility that has an emergency room. That patient may need to go to surgery relatively emergently, and you don't have a lot of information. So you have to selectively prepare your anesthetic and be prepared for the outcome. There's something called malignant hypothermia, which we won't spend a lot of time talking about, but oftentimes you don't find out that you are susceptible to malignant hypothermia until after you're already having it. So I think that my time in the emergency room prepared me for the unexpected, the emergent patient, and the rapid actions that have to take place in order to prevent negative outcomes. And so I'm thankful for that time in the emergency room. After leaving the emergency room, I ended up going into administration. And administration was, man, it's hats off to everybody who does administration. You're very needed, and it takes a very special skill set and mindset to enter into nursing administration and stay there and make a difference. You know, a lot of people give administration a hard time, but understand that their roles are equally important to the clinician at the bedside, because they are the ones who are responsible for providing a optimal work environment for the nursing staff. They are the ones who are responsible for ensuring that we have the equipment that's needed, the training that's needed, and of course, the compensation so that we can take care of our families while taking care of others so that they may return to their families. What administration taught me, though, is that it's a bigger picture than we see at the bedside. There's so many other components in healthcare that I think sometimes us as clinicians often neglect to realize or appreciate maybe. And administration is my reminder that, I should think about how wasteful I am with equipment, how it's an important thing to take care of equipment that we've been provided, because there's a cost to everything, and everything is increasing in cost. Therefore, I have an appreciation for my workspace and my work equipment. During that time, I also spent some time on vascular access, which as a CRNA, you'll learn that you are ultimately responsible for providing access to a patient, sometimes emergently while they're under anesthesia, and they may need vital anesthetics that may be being provided intravenously. And if you lose an IV, it's important to have that skill set to gain additional vascular access. So again, I'm thankful for that exposure and experience during my time prior to CRNA. From there, I moved on to critical care. And this is, of course, as most of you who are pursuing a journey may know, this is your bread and butter. This is where, or should I say, what's required for you to get into CRNA school. So once I entered into ICU, it was an adjustment. And for those of you who are ER nurses, paramedics who from the outside looking in kind of dread the idea of going into the ICU and you feel that it's boring and you don't want to be there, I get it. I've been there. I've felt those things. For those of you who have spent your time in healthcare and now you have responsibility of family, kids, all of the things, and you just don't want to change, I challenge you to move past your comfort zone, to let that complacency of where you are not control where you could be, because that was my struggle. A friend of mine told me while I was considering it, they said, you're not going to be happy until you do what you set out to do. A piece that I didn't mention earlier is that I left fire service to go to anesthesia school. Yet my path took me on a different journey for a time. And they were right. I wouldn't have been happy until it was time or until I achieved what I set out to do. And that was anesthesia. And I said, I can't argue with that. This is what I said I wanted to do. And instead of finding reasons why I can't, I'm going to find reasons why I can. So my time in the ICU was valuable. It gave me the opportunity to fine tune skills that I had not fully developed, how to manage multiple drips, how to manage patients that are very unique in their management, in their care, and really dig into labs and how to get to the root of not only what happened to the patient, but what happens next and how to get them to that position where they can leave the ICU. Ultimately, that should be the goal. All in all, my journey has really helped me to become what I would say is a well-rounded clinician. I don't see things just from one perspective. I try to look at it from, what did my pre-hospital experience teach me? What did my ER experience teach me? What did administration teach me? What did working with vascular access in the pediatric environment teach me? And all in all, it taught me people interaction and how to interact with people on multiple levels, how to interact with people at different facilities, because that's another thing that the book just can't teach you. Really fine tune and, consider how you deal with people. Consider how you care for people. Yeah, sure, we're in it and, we provide medicine. But I think that what we're in and what we're doing is so much deeper than medicine. It's that human touch. It's how you approach people. It's how you talk to people. It's how you care for people. And that's ultimately, in my opinion, better than the medicine. It taught me how to deal with people of all ages. It taught me access. It taught me flow. And all of those things I think was very beneficial for my journey and my career as a CRNA. Oftentimes I get the question of, how do you prepare for school? I used to tell people that, you gotta, study your pharmacology. You have to study anatomy and physiology. You have to really dig deep and understand pathophysiology. And now, while all of that's very true, you need good academics. You need good understanding of form, patho, and all of those things. They're very important. But what I can tell you most is that your mindset is what matters more than all of that, because you can get the pharmacology, you can get the pathophysiology. That's just studying. That's just repetition, reading, understanding, and comprehension. And if you've made it to the point that you are, you've made it through RN school, you've made it through paramedic school, you've made it through whatever point you are on your journey, that tells me that you have the ability to read and comprehend. What we're often not prepared for is the mental game. How well is your mind prepared for the journey that you are about to pursue? You can go to any website, any influencer, any article, and you will hear that CRNA school is a tough journey. And what we often forget is that life continues to life, regardless of the journey that you're on. And my question to you is, how well are you prepared mentally to endure the journey? You're talking 3 years of schooling that there is no pause. You can't lay off this semester. You can't make up the time next semester. You go straight through. And for the most part, if you decide to stop, that's it. You start over. So when you enter into this journey, you have to go in with the mind and determination to be successful, regardless of what life brings your way. You'll hear the term imposter syndrome. And that, in short, is when you feel that while you are where you are, that you are an imposter, as if you're not supposed to be there. There's a quote that says, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And that's by Henry Ford. What does that mean? If you believe you can do it, then you can. But if you believe you can't, then you're right as well. You can't. When I'm talking with people about the journey and they start to name all of the reasons of why they haven't, why they can't, why they aren't sure, I tell them to stop naming reasons to not do it. You know that they're there. If you look hard enough, should I say, if you look around the corner, and you may not even have to look around the corner, you look in front of you, you will find a reason to not do it. The goal here is to look for reasons to do it. If you've decided that this is part of your purpose in life, then I challenge you to look for reasons to do it and not consider the reasons why you can't. That's easy to find. Start trying to find all the ways that you can do it. I did it with a family. I'm not saying that just because I did it, you can do it. But I'm telling you that if you say you want to do it, you can do it. It's just what sacrifices are you willing to make. And we all have different sacrifices that we have to make to endure this journey, to make it through this journey. But I believe that if you spend time growing and developing your mind, you'll be prepared for this journey. And what do I mean by growing and developing your mind? Well, back in November, after graduation, I started doing a lot of reading and thinking about just overall quality of life. And there's several things that I came across. And I think that sometimes we feel like we're at our best when everything is going right. But I argue that That's not necessarily when we're at our best, because when everything is going right, I believe we get comfortable, we get complacent. So to me, you're at your best when you're having challenge. You're trying to be better. You're trying to improve. There's a book that I read that talks about doing hard things. So every day I try to challenge myself to do something difficult. And I think as you go along your journey, or should I say, I believe, as you go along your journey and you try to do those difficult things. I once had all 5, at the time they were 5 certifications through the BCEN, the Board Certification of Emergency Nurses, and I had all 5 certifications. And sometimes people would jokingly say things about having all the certifications, alphabet soup and all. And I get it. It's kind of funny to see people's name with all of these credentials behind it. But I didn't do it for the title or to put the long title after email. It was because I wanted to challenge myself in every area that I practice. And as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, I practiced in pediatrics, I practiced in transport, I practiced in trauma. And I wanted to prove to myself that I had a foundational competency in every area. So I challenge you as you prepare for this journey to challenge yourself along the way. Know that you can do hard things. Know that you belong wherever you are in life. And that if you want to do this, you absolutely can. Another quote that I like a lot is, it's all in your mind. Whatever you hold in your mind will tend to occur in your life. If you want different results in your life or your work, all you have to do is change your mind. I graduated a year ago as of today. So it's actually my anesthesia-versary. And I don't regret it. I don't regret the sacrifice. I don't regret all of the obstacles that I had to overcome. And I'm appreciative of the lessons that I learned along the way. So that's my journey to becoming a CRNA. It was not a straight path, and it wasn't the timeline that I initially had set. But as you drive along the way and stay on your journey, try not to look left, try not to look right, maintain your lane, and you'll arrive to your destination, not in time, but on time. I appreciate everybody listening. You can check me out. Give me a follow on Instagram. It's at the Paramers. Again, that's at the Paramers. THE_PARAMURSE. And for those thinking I'm not saying Merce because of male nurse, I tried to put the word paramedic and nurse together, and that's how I came up with Paramers. So anyway, give me a follow. I'm happy to answer any questions. I enjoy it. I encourage you to continue to chase your dreams, pursue whatever goals you've set forth for yourself, and you'll arrive at your destination.